In this video, we are going to take a look at Paige Bueckers and if she is doomed in the 2025 draft. Now, I have done a previous video looking at where she might go, and I basically outlined that she had a 45.4% chance of going to a really bad team, which is Dallas, and they are an S show. And I said, that's a bad thing, but she does have a chance to go to LA, and I'm sure Kathy Engelbert will make it happen, as she had a 44.2% chance of going to LA. And I thought a bit of old David Stern action, maybe a little bit of folded envelope or putting the envelope in the freezer. Yes, I know that's an outdated reference, but you get the idea. But now looking at it, Paige Bueckers' chances of going to a good team, or a good organization, should I say, they are down to 10.4%. Yes, the only hope is if somehow, some way, Washington scores the number one pick with a 10.4% chance. Maybe the lottery gods will look down on them very kindly with karma, as they did not tank to improve their draft odds. But if you've not figured it out by now, clearly I am out on the LA Sparks, and I will go into full detail why this is a case, and now why the LA Sparks are just as much of a tire fire as the Dallas Wings. Now, I have not even mentioned the Chicago Sky, as there's no chance for Paige Bueckers to go there, as Dallas owns the swap rights to their pick. So one way or another, Paige Bueckers is either going to go to the LA Sparks, or to the Dallas Wings, or to the Washington Mystics. And this is obviously dependent on who gets the number one pick. If you want to have an argument whether Paige Bueckers will be drafted number one, go to another site, because it's a done deal. If she stays healthy, she will be the number one draft pick. But even though Chicago is not involved for the number one pick, they give off the symptomology of how you can tell a bad organization. And how you tell a bad organization: the stability of their head coach. Organizations that are run well tend to have a head coach there for many a year. So in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Or back in the day, Miami and Shula and Dallas and Landry. You knew those coaches, you knew those teams would be good. Because when you are a bad organization, the most simple thing to do when it goes bad is to fire your coach, because it's hard to get rid of all the players. No, we need a new culture. We'll get a new coach in there. And I give you the most recent example: Chicago's firing of Teresa Weatherspoon. But as well, if you take a look at the Dallas Wings in the Greg Bibb era, it is always the coach's fault. It is never Greg Bibb's fault. It is always the coach. From Fred Williams being fired to Brian Agler, and then after that, I think it was Vicki Johnson, and the next one on deck to be fired is Latricia Trammell. But I don't think Greg Bibb will have the guts to fire her, as I think he knows that if he does that, he's likely gone himself, maybe, even though he's part of the ownership group, and it's very weird there. So I don't know if Greg Bibb will ever be gone. Maybe he's like Jerry Jones. And then that brings me to the LA Sparks. As you are likely aware, they have recently fired Kurt Miller as their head coach, or they've agreed to part ways, which is a nice way of saying, yeah, we fired you. And because I am a troll, I was thinking about doing a video with the thumbnail, Kurt Miller fired because bad coach, bad organization, or too gay. And that's just because I like to piss people off. So many people were irritated by the teaspoon videos, like, okay, let's lean into this. But then I thought, I don't want to distract about how much of an S show the LA Sparks are, and why you should be worried if you're an LA Sparks fan, and why Paige Bueckers should be right now really concerned if the LA Sparks get the number one draft pick, because they are a historic S show. And this firing of Kurt Miller, whether you think Kurt Miller is a coaching genius or he's awful, one thing is very clear: he is competent and better than what they have had since Penny Toller was fired. And some of you might not know your Sparks history, but essentially the Sparks were on the verge of folding. Magic Johnson and his ownership group came in and bought the Sparks and saved them. Hooray. And the parts were in place. They went to 2 finals and they won one of those. The team was led by Candace Parker and Nneka Ogwumike. And then in 2018, Brian Agler, the coach, suddenly resigned. And then they were without a coach, and they figured Toller at the time said, "Oh, I'll hire Derek Fisher," even though he'd gone. He was a disaster with the New York Knicks, but they said, "Okay, he can coach in the WNBA," and he was an unmitigated disaster. I think it was Ramona Shelburne who did a great piece on it. His first season there, they were in the playoffs and they were down their first game, and during like one of the practices prior to the second playoff game, Nneka Ogwumike and Candace Parker were like, "Can we introduce something to counter the trap?" And then in the practice, Derek Fisher lost his mind and started swearing at the players and saying the reason you're not winning is because you're not playing well, and F-bombed them. And then they went on to lose the series, and it was an unmitigated, terrible disaster, which was made worse as the team's GM, Penny Toller, was fired after the season when it got leaked that she had talked to the team and berated them with racial epithets, talking about how poorly they were playing. And then after she was fired, they replaced her with Derek Fisher, who was named coach and GM, which was made further worse because during the playoff series in an elimination game, he essentially benched Candace Parker. And hence, when Candace Parker became a free agent, she was out of LA despite being there her whole entire career. Went on to Chicago and won the championship, and everybody memed Derek Fisher making fun of him. And LA Sparks went on to continue to be a disaster, which included him trading a number one pick to Atlanta to get Kennedy Carter and bringing Liz Cambage in. And it was just a terrible season. And by midway through that season, he got fired. In the background as well, Penny Toller filed a lawsuit where she alleged that she was fired wrongfully, and then she let or spilt the tea, if you like, just letting all the secrets out of the organization with accusations that Agler, the coach, had an inappropriate relationship with the player. The player was never named, but she did put that one out there, and it was never confirmed. So that was an allegation. The other one was that the part of the ownership group below Magic Johnson is Eric Holloman, and in her lawsuit, she alleged that she wanted to trade Candace Parker, which doesn't look good from a GM perspective, but she alleged that and said that that was blocked by Holloman as he was having an affair with the team vice president, and the team vice president or president, whatever she was close to Candace Parker and gotten to his ear and saying, "Don't trade CP because I'm close to him," and she was blocked in doing that trade. It was just her way of basically getting out in the open that Holloman was having an affair with the team president, and it was just really, really messy. They settled the lawsuit. Who knows? The allegations were never proved, but that's how messy the LA Sparks were. And that season, Derek Fisher's last season was nasty. He got fired early on. Then Fred Williams took over. Then Liz Cambage walked out on the team, what was called a divorce. And Kennedy Carter was a mess as well. They weren't getting anything from her. And when the season finished, it was out with everybody, and they brought in Kurt Miller to change the culture. Now, he decided not to bring back Kennedy Carter, even though she had a guaranteed contract. And the mandate was clear: rebuild the organization, do it properly. We're going to keep our hands off and let Kurt rebuild it. And that is exactly what Kurt Miller did. He looked at what they had, which was nothing, as Nneka Ogwumike, after playing the first year with Miller, she left for free agency and went to Seattle, and really the LA Sparks had no option but to rebuild, and they have done that. So they drafted Brink and Rakia Jackson, and the mandate was clear: get lottery balls and get another franchise player, which obviously they're hoping will be Paige Bueckers. And as expected, the Sparks were terrible this season. The only shining light was Rakia Jackson playing well. Unfortunately, Cameron Brink got injured. They also feel like they have a building block in Derek Hamby, but the organization had a clear direction and knew what they were doing. They were tanking, getting young players, and rebuilding with a young core. But then alarm bells should have gone off when Magic Johnson did an interview with Bill Plaschke. And Plaschke got access to Magic Johnson. It was pretty much an ill-informed article, basically saying how the Sparks screwed up by not taking Angel Reese, and he even looked back at the not holding on to Marina Mabrey when she was a second-round pick. I mean, if you were going to go after the Sparks, you would obviously go after them, I would think, of anything on Kurt Miller not taking a look at Kennedy Carter. But even with that, if you were going to blast Kurt Miller for doing that, basically none of the other teams, after he cut her, nobody else took up Kennedy Carter. All the other teams had a chance of her, and nobody said, yeah, we're in on Kennedy Carter. That only happened by Teresa Weatherspoon a year after she was banished from the WNBA. So I think that is revisionist history. But the good part of the article, or the focus on the article, was basically about the LA Sparks and how they don't have a training facility. And for years, it's been a bad situation as they train at a junior college. Some years they've been at Long Beach. They've never had a home. And in a lot of ways, that's one of the reasons Nneka Ogwumike left, as Seattle is building a new facility. That was one of the reasons she didn't go to Chicago, because at the time when she and Diggin Smith looked at Chicago, they saw that they were practicing out of a rec center, and that's what all these players want. And in this article with Pulaski, Magic Johnson says, yeah, we're looking at that. We're considering our options, and we hope to have a new facility sometime in the future. Just promises. And then he goes in and says, I've taken my eye off the ball. If I've done anything wrong, I've probably let Eric Holloman run it too much, and I haven't been involved. And oh my God, alarm bells. If you were a Sparks fan, Magic Johnson wants to be involved again. And basically, this article takes the Sparks on for poor running of the organization, which goes over his tenure, and due to poor facilities, and their option is, we need to fire Kurt Miller. In the article, he says, I'm going to get more involved. He said, it's probably been my fault that I let Eric Holloman make all the decisions, and us, the owners, we've been sitting back a little. I think I have to get more involved, and I'll do that. That's a commitment to the fans that I will get more involved and be part of it more to help bring the Sparks back to a championship level. Johnson goes on to say, this is my fault. It's not about paying attention, it's about being involved. On Kurt Miller, he said, we wait until the season is over and we look at everybody. There's nothing I can tell you right now. He said, Kurt has been up against it because injuries have hurt us, but you've got to look at it from both sides. Did he make the proper adjustments? Did he use the talent well? You also may say, hey, we are 7-32 for a reason. And then, sure enough, after the season ends, Kurt Miller and the Sparks agree to go their separate ways. And I know some will be critics of Kurt Miller, but he did a good job in Connecticut. And the reality is, he really wasn't given a shot to prove what he could do in LA with a good roster. They decided to go the rebuild, and they fired him halfway through. Next year, his third year, would have been the deal. Are they making progress? Could they make the playoffs if they score Paige Bueckers and stay healthy? That was the question. And to fire him now makes absolutely no sense, as you lose all continuity that you had. And usually the Sparks do not pay well. They have a poor facility. They are not going to outbid Golden State on a top level coach. I seriously doubt they're going to go to the NBA Development League and do a Nate Tibbetts or something like that. So in my opinion, poor Paige Bueckers, her only hope is to go to the Washington Mystics, because the LA Sparks, more likely than not, are going to repeat history and be a tire fire once again. Now, here's the funny thing. If I was going to fire a coach, the coach that I would fire would be Eric Tebow, because by winning, he cost them a chance at Paige Bueckers. Now, that's not going to happen because his dad, Mike, is the general manager of the Washington Mystics. Oh, the WNBA front offices. You've got to love it. My advice to Bueckers, stay back in school in 25, make that NIL, and then maybe you can go to Golden State if they switch up the rules for 26. All right, your comments, your poison, all welcome. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.